Welcome to Zoe Stories. Teacher promised focus. Instead, she made me dress like a girl. I had always thought I could keep my two lives separate, my school persona, sharp and unremarkable, and the private me, the one who delighted in the textures of fabric, the thrill of eyeliner, and the subtle power of heels. My name is Ryan, a 17-year-old with a curiosity and secret obsession that I never dared share with anyone, not even my girlfriend, Ava. On the outside, I was just another student, careful to blend into the background, careful not to draw attention. But behind closed doors, I explored a side of myself I could never reveal, the side that wanted to feel beautiful, soft, and seen. It started innocently. A borrowed scarf from my sister, a swipe of her lip gloss, a pair of tights hidden in my drawer. What began as experimentation soon became a routine, a secret that gave me a thrill I couldn't explain. The sensations were intoxicating, the soft swish of a skirt, the cool caress of silk against my skin, the unfamiliar but thrilling sway of heels beneath my feet. Each moment of transformation left me simultaneously exhilarated and terrified, caught between two identities that could never fully merge. The idea of being caught, of someone discovering my secret, had always terrified me. My parents were practical, traditional, and protective, and my friends, though kind, were not the type to understand. Ava, my girlfriend, was affectionate, intelligent, and somehow had a way of sensing when I was hiding something. But even she didn't know the full truth. The duality of my existence, of Ryan and the private persona I loved to become, was a delicate balance, a secret I guarded with every ounce of care. It was on a Friday afternoon, just after the last bell, that everything began to shift. I had promised my physics teacher, Miss Caldwell, that I would stay after school to focus on our project, a demonstration experiment on optics. Miss Caldwell had always been strict, precise, with a presence that could make even the most confident students tremble. Her expectations were clear: focus, discipline, and absolute dedication. I arrived early, backpack slung over my shoulder, notebook in hand. The classroom was nearly empty, the fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow over the polished floors. Miss Caldwell was already there, arranging equipment on the lab tables, her sharp blouse tucked perfectly into a pencil skirt. She looked every bit the part of a teacher who commanded respect, and even from the doorway, I felt a familiar mix of nervousness and admiration. Ryan," she said, without looking up. Her voice was calm, controlled, yet it carried a weight that made me straighten instinctively. "I'm glad you decided to stay. We need your full attention today." I nodded, moving toward the lab table with the pretense of confidence. But my mind wandered, as it often did in these quiet, private moments. I couldn't help noticing the subtle elegance of her outfit, the meticulousness of her hair, the faint perfume that lingered in the air. And then, her gaze fell on me. Not the usual teacherly scan, but something different. A spark, a curiosity, a hint of mischief. "I want you focused, Ryan," she said, finally looking up. Her eyes locked with mine, piercing yet unreadable. But sometimes focus can be guided in unexpected ways. I froze slightly, unsure what she meant. The corners of her lips twitched in a barely there smile. "If you truly want to concentrate, to experience clarity, there might be a method I can show you," she continued, her voice dropping slightly, intimate in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. "But it requires trust and participation." I nodded again, though my heart raced. Something in her tone suggested a shift from conventional teaching into something personal, something I wasn't fully prepared for. And yet, curiosity gnawed at me, that forbidden thrill of stepping into the unknown. She gestured toward a small cabinet in the corner, one I hadn't noticed before. "There are some materials you might find helpful," she said, her voice soft, almost conspiratorial. "Clothes, accessories, items that can aid in focus. They're unconventional, but they work. I expect you to follow instructions exactly." My mind swirled. Clothes? Accessories? I swallowed, my pulse quickening. Part of me panicked. This was absurd, impossible. Part of me, however, Felt the pulse of excitement I had felt countless times before when alone, experimenting in the secrecy of my room. The lure of transformation, the temptation of surrendering to something both thrilling and forbidden, tugged at me relentlessly. Ms. Caldwell walked closer, placing a neat stack of folded garments on the table. Silk blouses, pleated skirts, tights, and a pair of modest heels were arranged with meticulous care. My breath hitched. She watched me carefully, eyes sharp and assessing. "I expect you to wear these," she said simply. "It's part of the process. Trust the method. Let it guide you. Focus can only be achieved when you understand all parts of yourself." The words sent a ripple of shock through me. I stared at the clothes, at the heels, at the skirt, at the blouse. My secret life, the part of me I had hidden so carefully, was suddenly being demanded in the open. And yet, the idea of doing this under her gaze, of allowing the transformation to happen with someone watching, sparked an unexpected thrill. My pulse raced, hands trembling slightly as I reached out and touched the fabric, silky, soft, foreign against my fingers. I'm not sure," I stammered, trying to maintain composure, though my mind reeled with excitement, fear, and hesitation. Ms. Caldwell tilted her head, the faintest smile crossing her lips. "Uncertainty is part of focus, Ryan. Trust the process. It will show you more than you ever expected." My heart hammered in my chest. I removed my bag, set it neatly against the wall, and for the first time in a long while, allowed the thrill of surrender to wash over me. I stripped down to my undershirt, feeling a rush of vulnerability as I prepared to step into the clothes laid before me. Silk brushed against my skin as I put on the blouse, and the skirt followed, swishing delicately with each movement. Tights hugged my legs, heels clicked against the floor. Every sensation was electric, every touch a revelation. Ms. Caldwell circled me slowly, appraising the transformation with an air of authority and subtle pride. "Good," she murmured, voice calm but commanding. "Now, embrace it fully. Focus will follow. Control comes through surrender." I looked at myself in the small mirror on the wall, eyes wide with a mix of awe, disbelief, and exhilaration. I saw both Ryan and the version of myself I had long kept hidden, the soft, elegant, and transformed self. And in that moment under her gaze, I realized that focus was no longer the only thing at stake. Something deeper, something thrillingly forbidden, had taken root, and I couldn't turn back. The first few minutes after slipping into the blouse and skirt were surreal. My reflection in the small classroom mirror stared back at me, a stranger, and yet intimately familiar. Silk against my skin, the pleated skirt swaying with each small movement, heels clacking softly on the tile. It all felt foreign and thrilling at once. My pulse raced as I tried to reconcile the two versions of myself. Ryan, the student who walked the halls with casual neutrality, and this transformed version, delicate, polished, undeniably feminine. Miss Caldwell observed silently, her eyes sharp, evaluating every adjustment I made. She didn't speak for a few moments, allowing the tension to build, letting me feel the vulnerability and excitement in equal measure. The air felt charged, each second stretching longer as I became acutely aware of the softness of the blouse, the weight of the skirt, and the subtle discomfort of the tights stretching against my legs. "Good," she said finally, breaking the silence. Her tone was calm, but the authority behind it made my stomach knot. "Now we focus. To truly understand optics, to engage fully with this experiment, you must embrace all parts of yourself, including this part." I swallowed, trying to steady my breathing. I think I understand," I murmured, though a part of me trembled at the thought of being watched so closely in this state. My secret, once confined to the privacy of my bedroom, was now exposed under her gaze. Every detail of my transformation was visible, the subtle curl of my hair, the soft contours of the blouse, the way the skirt hugged my form. Ms. Caldwell nodded approvingly. "Focus isn't just about vision, Ryan. It's about attention, surrender, and understanding. You can't be distracted by fear or embarrassment. The more you let go, the more you will see." Her words were strange, almost hypnotic. I could feel a part of myself giving in, the thrill of the secret life I had so carefully hidden flooding through me. Each adjustment of my skirt, each careful step in the heels, heightened the tension, excitement, and vulnerability all at once. I felt simultaneously exposed and empowered, every nerve on fire. "You may begin," she instructed. "First, the setup. Follow the experiment exactly as I show you. Every step matters." I moved toward the lab table, careful with every click of the heels, every swish of the skirt. The tactile sensations were magnified, heightened by the awareness of Miss Caldwell's watchful gaze. Each movement, each adjustment of the blouse or skirt, felt like part of a performance, a delicate dance between composure and the vulnerability I had never felt so acutely before. The experiment required precise placement of lenses, mirrors, and light sources. My hands shook slightly, partly from nerves, partly from the thrill of performing under observation, while transformed. Ms. Caldwell circled me again, silently monitoring, occasionally reaching out to adjust my posture or correct my hand placement. Each touch was brief, professional in appearance, yet every contact sent a jolt through me, intensifying the duality of my emotions: fear, excitement, shame, and desire. "You're doing well," she said, a hint of a smile crossing her lips. "But remember, Ryan, the focus isn't just here." She tapped lightly at her temple. "It's also in understanding who you are when you step into roles like this. Awareness of yourself in this moment is crucial." I nodded, though my mind spun. Awareness of myself, the thought echoed in my mind. It wasn't just about the experiment, not really. It was about surrender, exploration, and control, or the illusion of it. My secret self, the one I had hidden behind layers of clothing and solitude, was now intertwined with the task at hand, and every flicker of my reflection in the glass, every shift of the skirt, reminded me of the fine line I was walking between fascination and exposure. The minutes stretched into hours. Ms. Caldwell guided me through intricate adjustments, correcting my posture, instructing on the precise alignment of lenses. The physical act of standing in heels, adjusting the blouse, and maintaining elegance became a meditation of sorts, blending focus on the experiment with acute awareness of my transformed self. My internal conflict churned with every passing moment. How much of this was about learning, and how much was about the thrill of surrendering to a side of me I had only explored in secret? At one point, I caught a glimpse of myself in a reflective surface across the room. The sight was jarring yet exhilarating. The familiar features of Ryan were softened by makeup and clothing, the stiff masculinity of my shoulders softened by the blouse. The way the skirt swayed with each step revealed a grace I had never embodied publicly. For a heartbeat, I felt fully exposed and yet fully alive, a contradiction that twisted my stomach with excitement and anxiety. Ms. Caldwell watched intently, her gaze unflinching. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. "The difference between who you are and who you allow yourself to become in these moments." I hesitated, words catching in my throat. "Yes," I admitted finally. I feel it." "Good," she said. "That awareness is focus. Understanding and controlling it is mastery. And mastery will guide you through this experiment, and through other challenges you will face." Her words were both reassuring and unnerving. There was no judgment, no ridicule, only calm authority that pressed me deeper into the duality of my emotions. I wanted to run, to retreat to the privacy of my own room, yet a stronger part of me, the part that had always secretly thrilled in these moments, urged me to stay, to submit fully to the process. Then came the next challenge, a subtle test. She handed me a pair of gloves, delicate and white, instructing me to handle a particularly sensitive lens. My hands shook slightly as I fitted them over my fingers, the unfamiliar texture amplifying my awareness of the transformation. Each careful movement was watched, every tremor noted, every adjustment a potential exposure of my secret. "You're doing well," she said, her tone calm but edged with a subtle intensity that made my heart pound. "But the true challenge isn't the equipment. It's maintaining composure, elegance, and focus while fully embracing who you are in this form. The words sent a shiver down my spine. Maintaining composure, elegance, focus, and identity. It was a delicate, dizzying balance, the thrill of cross-dressing magnified by the knowledge that I was being observed, guided, and tested simultaneously. Every swish of the skirt, every click of the heels, every gentle adjustment of hair or blouse reminded me of the razor-thin line I was walking between empowerment and vulnerability, curiosity and fear. As the clock ticked, I found myself lost in the rhythm of the work, the physical awareness of my transformed self blending with the technical precision of the optics experiment. My pulse remained high, a mix of excitement, nervousness, and an undercurrent of longing I had never acknowledged. I realized I was experiencing something far beyond the confines of a school project. The heady thrill of exposure under controlled circumstances, the delicate tension of secret and public selves converging, and the intoxicating sensation of finally letting someone see a part of me I had hidden for so long. And yet, beneath the exhilaration, fear lingered. What if Ava found out? What if someone walked in unexpectedly? The thought sent a jolt through me, grounding me, reminding me of the stakes. Every subtle movement, the skirt swaying, the heels clicking, was both a source of thrill and a potential risk. I was trapped in the delicate tension of secrecy and revelation, and every second drew me deeper into the uncertainty of what might come next. The classroom felt smaller now, confined not by walls but by the intensity of what was happening. Each movement I made in the heels echoed across the tile floor, a rhythmic reminder of the precarious line I walked. Ms. Caldwell circled me again, hands behind her back, her gaze both critical and patient, measuring my every twitch, every adjustment. "Balance is crucial," she said softly, yet with unmistakable authority. "Not just physical balance, Ryan, but the balance between control and surrender. You cannot excel if you are distracted by doubt or fear." Her words cut through me, and I realized how true they were. Every inch of my body felt heightened, the gentle stretch of the blouse over my shoulders, the skirt brushing against my thighs, the heels pressing subtly into the arches of my feet. Even my breathing had changed, shallow and deliberate, as I tried to maintain composure. I was acutely aware that my vulnerability was on display, yet there was a strange exhilaration in that awareness, a thrill that mingled with anxiety. "Now," she continued, her voice lowering slightly, almost conspiratorially, "you must handle the next part yourself. Adjust the lenses and align the mirrors. Every detail matters, and every mistake can reveal something." I swallowed, hands trembling slightly as I approached the table. Each movement required precision, but my attention was divided, half focused on the experiment, half consumed with the awareness of how the fabric clung to me, how the heels forced me to move carefully, how the skirt swished with each step. The duality was intoxicating and terrifying at once. As I worked, Ms. Caldwell observed silently, occasionally leaning in to correct my posture or guide my fingers. Every touch, though brief, sent a jolt through me. My pulse quickened, my stomach tightened, and my cheeks burned, not from embarrassment alone, but from a complex mixture of thrill, vulnerability, and the subtle undercurrent of something forbidden. "Good," she murmured after a particularly precise adjustment. "You're learning control. But control alone is not enough. You must also embrace who you are in this form. Awareness of self is as important as precision in your work." I nodded, though my heart pounded. The sensation of being fully transformed, observed, and evaluated was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The private thrill I had felt alone in my room now collided with the intensity of scrutiny, creating a cocktail of emotions I struggled to contain. Every brush of fabric, every adjustment of hair, every click of the heels was magnified, turning ordinary movements into moments of revelation and tension. Then came the unexpected challenge. Ms. Caldwell handed me a small mirror, instructing me to check the alignment of a delicate lens while maintaining perfect posture. My hands shook slightly, not from the complexity of the task but from the awareness of the reflection staring back at me. In that small mirror, I saw myself fully transformed. Every curve of the blouse, the skirt swaying delicately with my movements, the heels giving me an unfamiliar grace. And I saw Ryan, the boy I had been, standing exposed and unguarded. Focus on both, Miss Caldwell instructed softly. See yourself, understand yourself, and maintain composure. The duality is your challenge. Her words were hypnotic, pulling me deeper into the task while amplifying my awareness of the transformation. I could feel the tension in my muscles, the heightened sensitivity of my skin, the delicate awareness of every movement. The heels forced me to walk carefully, the skirt reminded me of vulnerability, and the blouse emphasized every subtle motion. It was a test of focus, control, and the ability to maintain composure while experiencing intense physical and emotional sensations simultaneously. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. My thoughts were a whirl of self-awareness and fear. What if Ava found out? What if someone unexpectedly entered the classroom? The heels clicked louder in my mind than in reality, each echo a reminder of the potential exposure. Yet even as fear gripped me, a stronger current of exhilaration ran beneath it, the forbidden thrill of surrendering to a side of myself I had never allowed to be witnessed. Miss Caldwell watched with an intensity that made my stomach knot. "You're doing well," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "But there's one final test for now. You must move with confidence, demonstrate your awareness of self, and maintain grace under scrutiny. Only then will the focus be complete." I nodded, though my legs felt unsteady. Moving gracefully in heels was one thing alone, another entirely under her gaze. I took a deep breath, adjusted my posture, and stepped forward, each motion deliberate, measured, and tense. The skirt swished, the heels clicked, and my heartbeat echoed in my chest like a drum. As I moved, the mirror caught my reflection again. I was fully exposed, every inch of transformation visible, yet every motion calculated. The thrill of being seen, the anxiety of potential discovery, and the rush of transformation collided into an overwhelming sensation. I could feel myself teetering on the edge of exhilaration and panic, trapped between fear and desire, secrecy and revelation. Ms. Caldwell nodded approvingly. "Excellent. You are learning to embrace all aspects of yourself. That awareness will guide you, Ryan, in ways you cannot yet imagine." And yet, even as I felt a strange sense of accomplishment, a flicker of unease surged through me. Something about the intensity of the session, the meticulous observation, and the way she had orchestrated the experience made my pulse race with anticipation and fear. I could not shake the feeling that the next moments would demand more than I was prepared to give, that the fine line between exhilaration and exposure was about to be tested further. The room seemed to shrink further as the session progressed. Every sound, the soft click of heels on tile, the faint rustle of fabric, the hum of the fluorescent lights above, was amplified in my mind. My movements had become both careful and instinctive, each step a delicate balance between grace and tension. Miss Caldwell's eyes never left me, a silent but insistent reminder that my dual existence was fully exposed. "Ryan," she said softly, stepping closer, "the next part will test your understanding of control and awareness. You must navigate not only the physical challenge, but also the mental one. Can you maintain your composure under heightened scrutiny?" I nodded, my stomach twisting. Composure had become a fragile thing, easily disturbed by the reflection in the mirror, by the brush of my blouse against my skin, by the sharp awareness of my heels pressing against the floor. Yet beneath the fear, a rush of excitement surged, a mixture of forbidden thrill, embarrassment, and anticipation. Ms. Caldwell handed me a small, delicate object, a glass prism for the optics experiment. My hands, clad in the white gloves, trembled slightly as I held it. The task was simple in theory: position the prism at the correct angle to refract the light. But under her gaze, it became a complex test of coordination, grace, and emotional control. Each adjustment required precision, but the added weight of being watched in this transformed state magnified every micromovement, turning the ordinary into an extraordinary challenge. "You are aware of yourself," she said, her tone calm, almost hypnotic. "Now, combine that awareness with your physical performance. Walk, adjust, and hold your posture as you manipulate the prism. Every motion must reflect focus and grace." I took a slow step forward, then another. The heels forced me to adjust my center of gravity, the skirt swayed, and the blouse hugged my body in ways that made me hyper-conscious of each gesture. Each movement became a test of nerve, each glance in the mirror a confrontation with my own duality. I was both the student and the transformed figure before her eyes, trapped in a delicate dance between exposure and control. As I manipulated the prism, my thoughts spiraled. What would Ava think if she knew? Would she understand? Or would the secret of this hidden side destroy her perception of me? The questions pressed against my mind, mingling with the physical sensations, the soft stretch of fabric, the subtle pressure of the heels, the gentle brush of my hair against my cheeks. Every detail heightened my awareness. Every reflection amplified the tension. Ms. Caldwell circled me again, her presence almost magnetic. She adjusted my posture, repositioned the prism, and offered subtle guidance with her voice and touch. Each interaction, brief as it was, sent a shiver through me, a mixture of vulnerability and exhilaration that I had never experienced in such intensity. I felt simultaneously exposed, tested, and strangely liberated. "Excellent," she said finally. "But now, the real challenge begins. You must maintain this balance under unexpected conditions. Distractions will come, and you must not falter." Her words made my stomach tighten. Distractions. My mind raced. What could possibly happen next? The room was quiet, yet the sense of anticipation was palpable, almost suffocating. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. Every small movement felt amplified, and the awareness of my transformed self became almost unbearable in its intensity. She gestured toward a small stack of textbooks on the side table. "You will now perform the alignment while I introduce an element of unpredictability. Focus on your work, maintain composure, and do not let your duality disrupt your performance." I turned toward the table, carefully positioning the prism, my body tense with every step. Then came the first distraction, a loud knock at the classroom door. My heart leapt into my throat. I froze, the heels locking momentarily in place, the skirt brushing awkwardly against my thighs. Miss Caldwell's eyes met mine, calm but knowing, as if she had anticipated this reaction. "Continue," she instructed, her voice steady. "Do not let it distract you. Every reaction counts, Ryan. Control is everything." I exhaled slowly, forcing my hands to steady as I realigned the prism. The knock came again, louder this time. My pulse raced, sweat prickling at the back of my neck. The sensation of the skirt against my legs, the heels under my feet, and the tightness of the blouse combined with the fear of being discovered, creating a heady cocktail of vulnerability and excitement. And yet, despite the fear, a part of me thrilled at the risk. The exposure, the possibility of discovery, the precarious balance between secrecy and surrender, it all heightened my senses in ways I had never experienced before. Each click of the heels, each subtle adjustment of the blouse, became a statement of defiance and surrender at once. Ms. Caldwell stepped closer, her presence a grounding force in the whirlwind of emotion. "You're managing well, Ryan," she said. "But remember, the test is not only about precision. It's about embracing the transformation, understanding your duality, and maintaining focus even when your world feels unstable." The next few minutes stretched endlessly. The knocks on the door, subtle movements of the blinds, the shifting light. Every small element was magnified in my awareness. My mind teetered on the edge of panic and exhilaration, yet I held myself together, guided by a strange combination of fear, thrill, and the desire to prove myself under scrutiny. Finally, Ms. Caldwell nodded, her approval both reassuring and unsettling. "You are learning to navigate the complexity of focus, transformation, and awareness. Remember this sensation. It will guide you in all challenges to come." But the experiment is not yet complete. The final stage will test not only your skill but your resilience and courage. I nodded, though my pulse still raced, every fiber of my body alert. The thrill of exposure, the fear of being discovered, and the intoxicating awareness of my transformed self had pushed me to the edge of my comfort. I realized with a mixture of dread and anticipation that the next stage would demand even more, that the line between exhilaration and vulnerability was about to blur further. The final stage of the exercise loomed over me like a shadow. My muscles ached slightly from maintaining the delicate posture required by the heels, and my mind was fatigued from constant hyper-awareness. Yet, the most exhausting part was the mental tightrope I was walking, balancing fear, exhilaration, and the growing intensity of being fully exposed. Miss Caldwell moved behind me, her presence close enough that I could feel the faint scent of her perfume. She did not speak immediately, letting the silence build a tension that made my heart hammer in my chest. Then, softly, she instructed, "Ryan, for this stage, you will navigate the room, demonstrating mastery over both movement and composure. Every step, every gesture, every glance must reflect confidence in your transformed self. Mistakes are not an option." I swallowed, my throat dry, and carefully took my first step. The heels forced me to focus entirely on balance, each movement deliberate. The skirt swished slightly with each step, reminding me of my vulnerability, while the blouse clung in ways that emphasized the physical changes I had undergone. My reflection in the mirror across the room showed me completely transformed, every inch of me under scrutiny, both from my own eyes and from Miss Caldwell's unwavering gaze. Suddenly, the classroom door creaked. My pulse spiked as I froze mid-step. Had someone come to interrupt? My mind raced with the possibility of discovery. But then I remembered Miss Caldwell's calm demeanor, her earlier warnings about distractions. I forced myself to breathe deeply, centering on the rhythm of my heels clicking against the tile. Each click was now a metronome, keeping me grounded in both body and mind. "You're doing well," she said quietly. "Now, integrate all aspects of the experience: physical awareness, emotional control, and the duality of self.
You are not just performing, Ryan.
You are becoming fully, and that is the ultimate challenge." I nodded, though the tension coiled in my stomach like a spring ready to snap. Moving across the room, I adjusted the placement of the prism again, repositioned a small textbook, and aligned the lenses meticulously. Each motion required full attention, yet the thrill of potential exposure, combined with the vulnerability of my attire, sent shivers through me. The heels made every step precarious, the skirt reminded me constantly of my transformation, and the blouse highlighted every subtle movement. Minutes felt like hours. My focus had to remain absolute, or the entire session would fail. Every time I caught a glimpse of my reflection, I felt a mixture of shock, admiration, and fear. Who was this person looking back at me? Was it Ryan, the boy I had been, or the transformed figure that Miss Caldwell had meticulously guided me to become? The answer was both and neither, suspended in a tense balance I could barely maintain. Then came the unexpected twist. A shadow fell across the doorway. My breath hitched. Someone was there. The familiar sound of Ava's voice called out softly, asking if I had finished yet. My heart lurched violently, and I froze in place, heels anchored and hands gripping the prism too tightly. Miss Caldwell's eyes met mine, a flicker of amusement dancing across her face. "Remember your training," she whispered. "Composure, Ryan. Every reaction counts." I forced myself to move, stepping lightly, carefully, ensuring my balance remained perfect even as my chest heaved and sweat prickled along my spine. Each movement felt surreal, the blend of fear, thrill, and embarrassment merging into a haze that left me dizzy. I realized that the stakes had risen far beyond what I had anticipated. The potential discovery of my secret by Ava added a layer of intensity that pushed me to the absolute edge of control. I approached the mirror once more, adjusting the lenses while keeping my movements smooth, deliberate, and graceful. The reflection staring back at me was mesmerizing, a perfect synthesis of vulnerability and poise, exposure, and control. Every brush of fabric, every careful step in the heels, every subtle adjustment of my hair reinforced the paradox I lived in, utterly exposed yet commanding, trembling yet elegant, terrified yet exhilarated. Ava's footsteps drew closer, her voice lilting with curiosity and slight concern. I could feel the adrenaline surging, the tension twisting my stomach. My hands shook subtly, the prism wobbled slightly, and my knees threatened to buckle. Yet I held my composure, forcing a calm smile as if nothing were out of the ordinary. Miss Caldwell stepped back, allowing me to navigate the final moments alone. "This is your culmination," she said softly. "Embrace it fully. This is the point where transformation meets mastery. And remember, every choice you make now will shape the perception of your dual self." I took a deep breath and moved toward the final position, aligning the prism perfectly. My body felt alive with heightened awareness, every sense sharpened by fear, excitement, and the thrill of exposure. The skirt brushed my legs, the heels pressed into my arches, the blouse clung perfectly, and the mirror reflected a fully transformed figure. But just as I finished, the door handle turned. Ava stepped in, her eyes widening slightly, and my heart leapt into my throat. In that instant, time seemed to freeze. The heels clicked sharply in my ears, the swish of the skirt sounded deafening, and the reflection in the mirror seemed to mock me with its stark contrast to the boy I had been. Miss Caldwell smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and whispered, "Now, Ryan, show her who you are." The room felt impossibly small, my pulse racing, my mind spinning with fear, excitement, and anticipation. I realized, with a mix of dread and exhilaration, that nothing would ever feel the same again. The line between my old self and my transformed self had blurred irreversibly, and the revelation of my secret was imminent. The moment Ava stepped into the room, my world seemed to tilt. Her eyes widened, and a mix of curiosity and confusion flitted across her face. I froze mid-step, heels pressing sharply into the floor, skirt swishing in a sound that now seemed unbearably loud. My heart pounded as adrenaline surged, threatening to betray every ounce of control I had fought to maintain. "Ryan, what are you wearing?" she asked, her voice soft but incredulous. I opened my mouth to explain, but the words caught in my throat. The explanation alone would take hours, and the reality of the transformation, the blouse, the skirt, the heels, the delicate makeup, made me feel naked and exposed in ways I had never experienced before. Every muscle in my body tensed. Miss Caldwell stepped aside, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "Show her, Ryan. Show her everything you've learned tonight," she said quietly, her voice calm but commanding. I swallowed hard and forced myself to take a step forward. The heels wobbled slightly, betraying my tension, but I kept moving, each motion deliberate, careful. Ava's gaze followed me intently, shifting between awe, confusion, and something I couldn't quite place, a spark of fascination, perhaps, or the undeniable acknowledgement that she was seeing me in a way she had never seen before. I didn't know," Ava whispered, trailing off. She took a cautious step closer, her eyes never leaving my face. "I didn't know you could look like this." The mixture of fear and exhilaration was almost unbearable. My mind raced. Should I explain, or should I remain silent and let my appearance speak for itself? The secrecy that had driven me to crow stress, the thrill of living this dual life, now collided with the immediate reality of being discovered. Ms. Caldwell's voice broke the tension, calm and precise. "You've worked hard for this, Ryan. Every step, every movement, every detail has led to this moment. Now, maintain your composure under scrutiny. Do not falter." I nodded subtly, focusing on my posture and breathing. The heels forced me to move with deliberate elegance, the skirt swaying with each motion, and the blouse clinging to my frame in a way that highlighted every subtle curve. I was both terrified and thrilled, fully aware of the duality I now embodied. Part Ryan, part transformed figure under Ava's gaze. Ava stepped even closer, tilting her head slightly. It's so different from what I imagined, she murmured, her eyes tracing the lines of my outfit, the careful application of makeup, the way my hair fell across my shoulders. You're beautiful in a way I didn't expect. My stomach twisted. Her words should have comforted me, but instead, they amplified the tension. The thrill of recognition, the fear of judgment, and the vulnerability of my exposed self converged in a dizzying mix. Every movement I made seemed to echo in the room, every swish of fabric, every click of heels marking the passage of time with heightened significance. Ms. Caldwell circled us, her eyes assessing, her presence a constant reminder of the ongoing challenge. Remember, Ryan, this is not just about appearance. It's about presence, control, and understanding your duality. Respond to the situation with poise, even when emotions threaten to overwhelm you. Ava reached out tentatively, her hand hovering near my arm. "Can I touch your hair?" she asked softly, uncertainty mingling with curiosity. I froze for a heartbeat, then nodded. Her fingers brushed against the strands, the sensation sending shivers down my spine. I realized in that moment that this was more than just an experiment or a challenge. It was a revelation of my identity, a confrontation with both fear and desire. Every brush of her hand made me acutely aware of my transformation, of the fragile balance between exposure and control, between secrecy and revelation. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the corner of the room. The stack of textbooks had toppled, scattering across the floor. My pulse jumped, and my balance wavered. The heels caught slightly on the edge of the carpet, and I stumbled, grasping for composure. Ava's eyes widened in alarm, and I felt a flush of humiliation threaten to overwhelm the exhilaration I had built so carefully. Miss Caldwell's voice cut through sharply, calm but commanding. "Recover, Ryan. Show that even in chaos, you maintain control." I adjusted my posture, steadying the prism in my hands, and took a slow, deliberate step forward. The room seemed to shrink further as I moved with precision. Every detail of my appearance, the swaying skirt, the delicate gloves, the heels, amplifying the tension. Ava's gaze followed every motion, her expression a mixture of surprise, admiration, and something unspoken that left my heart racing. For a moment, the world narrowed to the three of us, Ava, Miss Caldwell, and me. The adrenaline coursing through my veins made my senses hyper-aware, the subtle rustle of fabric, the click of my heels, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I realized that every small movement now carried weight, every gesture a statement of both control and vulnerability. Ava stepped back slightly, her eyes meeting mine fully. "I don't know if I should be shocked, impressed, or a little scared," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly with a mix of emotion. The tension reached a fever pitch. My body trembled with anticipation, fear, and the intoxicating thrill of exposure. Miss Caldwell's approving nod only heightened the stakes, reinforcing the knowledge that this was more than a simple demonstration. It was the culmination of everything I had learned, every secret I had guarded, every thrill I had experienced. And then, just as I began to feel a fragile sense of control, a sudden sound from the hallway, footsteps, heavy and deliberate, made the room feel impossibly small. My pulse spiked violently. Ava turned toward the sound, and I froze, the heels threatening to betray my balance. The door handle rattled. The hallway light flickered. My heart raced, my hands gripping the prism tightly, and I realized that the ultimate challenge had just arrived. Someone was about to see me fully, without warning, without preparation. The moment of truth, the pinnacle of suspense, was imminent. I swallowed hard, every nerve on fire, and whispered to myself, "I can't go back now." The rattling of the door handle sent a jolt through my body, freezing me in place. My heels seemed heavier, every swish of my skirt louder, as though the room itself had amplified my vulnerability. Ava's eyes widened, her hand instinctively moving toward her mouth, and I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that the secret I had worked so hard to protect was teetering on the brink of being exposed. The footsteps outside grew louder, deliberate, each tap of the soles against the corridor floor punctuating the tension like a drumbeat. My heart raced uncontrollably.
Who could it be?
My mind spun through possibilities, none of them reassuring. Miss Caldwell remained calm, her gaze unwavering, silently commanding me to maintain composure. A shadow appeared under the doorframe, a silhouette I couldn't immediately recognize. My stomach knotted. I tried to adjust the prism in my hands, hoping to appear casual, but my fingers trembled, sending it clattering slightly against the desk. The noise drew the attention of the figure, who paused momentarily, tilting their head. "Ryan," a voice called hesitantly. I froze entirely, heels locked in place. "Ava? No, someone else?" Ms. Caldwell stepped closer to my side, whispering with measured authority, "Maintain your poise. One slip, one misstep, and the illusion collapses."
Control it, Ryan.
I nodded subtly, forcing my shaking limbs to obey. Each breath became a conscious effort to steady the panic surging through me. I could feel the sweat prickling along my back, and my skirt clung uncomfortably, a constant reminder of the persona I was now embodying. The door creaked wider, and my pulse jumped violently. The shadow resolved into the figure of Mr. Bennett, the senior teacher who often patrolled the hallways late in the evening. His brow furrowed slightly, and he stepped in, glancing around the room. "Everything all right here?" he asked casually, though the tone carried a hint of suspicion. My mind raced. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. If he sees me like this, if he notices the skirts, the heels, the transformation, the thought alone made my stomach churn with fear and embarrassment. Ms. Caldwell's calm voice cut through sharply. "Mr. Bennett, we are conducting a focus exercise. Everything is under control," she said smoothly, her eyes briefly meeting mine. The subtle nod reassured me, though barely, that she had a plan to navigate this intrusion. I forced a smile, a tight-lipped expression designed to appear natural. "Yes, everything's fine," I mumbled, my voice slightly higher than usual, betraying a hint of tension. Mr. Bennett raised an eyebrow, looking between me and the teacher. "Very well, but don't take too long," he said, then turned and exited, the sound of his footsteps fading down the corridor. I sagged slightly, relief mingled with lingering terror. My knees threatened to buckle, and I gripped the prism tighter, the metallic edges digging into my palms. Miss Caldwell's hand rested lightly on my shoulder, a grounding presence in the storm of emotions raging inside me. "You handled that well," she murmured. "Now, focus on the final steps. The peak of this transformation is near, and your ability to maintain control under pressure will define the outcome." I nodded, though every fiber of my being trembled. My reflection in the mirror caught my attention, and for a moment, I lost myself in the image staring back. The heels, the skirt, the carefully applied makeup, all of it screamed exposure, vulnerability, and an identity I had barely begun to reconcile with. The face in the mirror was undeniably mine, yet not entirely. The duality was jarring, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. Ava, still standing near the doorway, had moved slightly closer. Her eyes traced my movements, curiosity and admiration mingling with a quiet tension. You're really doing it, aren't you?" she whispered, almost breathlessly. I swallowed hard, forcing my composure. I'm trying," I admitted softly. Every word felt heavy with meaning, every syllable a fragile thread holding together the fragile illusion I had become. Ms. Caldwell clapped her hands softly, a signal to continue. "Now, integrate your duality fully. Respond to challenges with grace, Ryan. Let every movement reflect mastery, even under the weight of exposure." I stepped carefully across the room, heels clicking sharply against the tile. Each movement was a battle against my own fear, against the creeping panic that threatened to reveal everything. The skirt swayed with deliberate rhythm. The blouse hugged my torso in a way that emphasized both elegance and vulnerability. My hands adjusted the prism with meticulous care, each motion precise yet fluid, a demonstration of control amidst chaos. Then, as I reached the center of the room, a sudden noise from the hallway made me flinch, a loud thump, like a dropped object. Ava gasped softly, her attention turning toward the door. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt the adrenaline surge, heightening every sense. Miss Caldwell's gaze met mine, calm and authoritative. Recover, Ryan. Use the moment to reinforce your poise. Show that, even when confronted with unpredictability, you remain composed. I took a slow, deliberate step forward, forcing my trembling hands to steady. The heels clicked with measured precision, the skirt's swish punctuating each movement. My reflection in the mirror became my anchor, a reminder of both vulnerability and mastery, of the dual self I was navigating. Ava's voice broke through softly. I don't know how you're doing this. You look perfect, but I can see how tense you are. I've never seen you like this before. The words, instead of comforting, amplified the intensity. My mind teetered on the edge of exhilaration and panic. The realization hit me. I was performing under scrutiny, balancing fear, excitement, and exposure in a way that would define everything about my relationship with Ava, my identity, and my sense of self. And just as I steadied myself, a sharp knock sounded at the door. A second visitor, unexpected and insistent. My heart stopped. Ava's eyes widened in alarm, and the mirror reflected a figure caught between two worlds, fully transformed yet dangerously close to being revealed. I realized then, with a shiver that ran down my spine, that the true climax, the ultimate test of composure, secrecy, and identity, was about to begin. The second knock at the door reverberated like a gunshot in the quiet room. My heart jumped violently, each beat echoing in my ears. I froze in place, heels digging into the floor as panic and exhilaration collided. Ava's wide eyes met mine, her lips parting slightly in shock, and I realized this was the moment everything could unravel. Ms. Caldwell stepped beside me, her posture rigid but composed. Stay calm, Ryan. One misstep and the illusion falls. Control your fear, or you will give yourself away, she whispered, her voice a lifeline of authority in the chaos. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and tried to steady my trembling hands. The prism I held clinked softly, betraying my nerves. This is it. One wrong move, and it's all over. The door creaked open, and a familiar voice called out, dripping with curiosity and suspicion. Ryan, are you in here? My stomach dropped. The unmistakable tone belonged to my best friend, Jake, who often came by unexpectedly. Panic surged. If he saw me like this, heels, skirt, makeup, there was no turning back. Every secret I had carefully guarded, every thrill of my hidden identity, was now on the brink of exposure. Ava instinctively stepped closer, her hand brushing mine in a silent gesture of reassurance, though the pressure of it made me even more aware of my exposed state. I could feel the warmth of her fingers through my glove, a mix of comfort and temptation, yet I had no time for reassurance. Every second counted. Ms. Caldwell's eyes narrowed slightly, reading the tension in the room. Ryan, she said sharply, you must act. Distract, redirect, and maintain control.
Now.
I nodded, forcing my panic into a carefully constructed calm. I stepped toward the door, my heels clicking with precision, each motion a performance in control. Hey, Jake. I'm just, practicing a project, I said, my voice slightly higher than normal, betraying a hint of nervousness. Jake stepped inside cautiously, his eyes scanning the room. A project. His gaze landed on the scattered textbooks, the prism in my hands, and finally on me. His brow furrowed. Ryan, why do you look like that? Every muscle in my body tensed. I could feel the weight of my transformation, the skirt clinging to my legs, the blouse accentuating my frame, the heels forcing a careful posture. My reflection in the mirror caught my attention, and I saw the duality. Ryan, the nervous young man, and the carefully constructed persona I had become, balanced on the knife's edge of exposure. Ava's voice broke through softly, yet with a sharpness that commanded attention. Jake, it's complicated. Just trust me for now. But Jake didn't move. He stepped closer, curiosity battling skepticism. Complicated? Ryan, you're different. I've never seen you like this. What's going on? My mind raced. I had to maintain composure, or the situation would spiral out of control. Every movement had to be precise, every word carefully chosen. I took a slow, deliberate step toward him, forcing my trembling hands to steady the prism in front of me. It's part of an experiment, I said, my voice calm but carrying a tension that only heightened the drama. Jake blinked, confusion and disbelief etched across his face. Experiment? With you dressed like that? I nodded subtly, forcing a confident posture.
Yes.
I needed to understand something about presentation, perception, control, I said carefully. Each word was a tightrope act, balancing honesty with secrecy. Ms. Caldwell's voice sliced through the tension. Ryan, show them your confidence. Let your transformation speak louder than your words. Presence is your shield. I inhaled sharply, letting the mirror's reflection anchor me. My dual self stared back, vulnerable yet poised, exposed yet commanding. I moved with slow precision, heels clicking, skirt swaying, every gesture deliberate. The prism caught the light, reflecting a subtle shimmer that drew Jake's gaze. Ava's hand remained on mine, grounding me, yet her touch sent a shiver down my spine. The mixture of fear and exhilaration was intoxicating, making my heart pound in a rhythm that matched the chaos in my mind. Jake's eyes narrowed. Ryan, are you serious? You're this you? Before I could respond, a sudden crash came from the hallway, the sound of a dropped bag. I flinched, heels wobbling slightly, and for a moment, it felt like the entire room had frozen. My secret, my thrill, my entire hidden world teetered on the edge of being shattered. Ava whispered urgently, Ryan, you have to maintain control. Don't let it slip. I gritted my teeth, forcing my hands to steady, focusing on my posture, my breathing, and the deliberate sway of my skirt. Every movement became a declaration. I was more than the fear, more than the panic. I was commanding the space, even under scrutiny. Jake leaned closer, suspicion still etched on his face, but a flicker of fascination appeared in his eyes. Eager? I don't know what to say, he admitted, the disbelief battling curiosity. The room's tension skyrocketed when the hallway door creaked again. Another shadow appeared. This time, it was the janitor, stopping mid-step as he noticed the scene inside. My heart lurched violently.
Not now.
Not like this. Ms. Caldwell's eyes met mine, her calmness a stark contrast to my racing pulse. Ryan, she whispered, now show them your control. Own the moment. Do not falter. I took a slow, deliberate step forward, heels clicking, skirts swaying with precision. The prism in my hands caught the overhead light, reflecting a dazzling shimmer. Ava's eyes widened, Jake's jaw slackened slightly, and the janitor paused, uncertain what he was witnessing. The realization hit me like a wave. I had transformed, fully and completely, yet the exposure, the thrill, and the danger of being caught had never felt so intense. Every fiber of my being screamed that this was the ultimate test, the pinnacle of suspense and revelation. And then, just as my composure seemed nearly perfect, the janitor cleared his throat and took a step closer, his shadow looming over the room. My chest tightened. I realized, with a shiver that ran down my spine, that the final moment of reckoning, the absolute confrontation with exposure, secrecy, and identity, was here. There was no turning back now. The janitor's footsteps echoed through the doorway, deliberate and heavy. My heart pounded violently in my chest, threatening to betray me. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to flee, yet I stood frozen, heels anchoring me to the floor, skirt swaying as I tried to maintain composure. Ava's hand gripped mine tightly, a lifeline, her eyes wide with alarm. Ryan, just stay calm, she whispered, her breath hot against my ear. Her presence was both reassuring and electrifying, making every movement feel more intense, more exposed. The janitor paused at the threshold, his gaze sweeping across the room. His brow furrowed slightly as he noticed me standing there, poised yet vulnerable, the prism catching light in a subtle shimmer. I could feel every inch of my body tense, each heartbeat amplifying the suspense. Miss Caldwell's voice broke through softly, almost like a chant. "Ryan, control your presence. Command the room. Let confidence be your shield." I took a deep, trembling breath and squared my shoulders. My reflection in the mirror revealed the duality. The boy who had been terrified of exposure, and the transformed persona who now stood poised, powerful, and dangerously alluring. I focused on the latter, letting every inch of my body convey confidence, even as adrenaline coursed through my veins. The janitor stepped forward, slowly, uncertainty written across his face. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, glancing between me and Miss Caldwell. His eyes lingered on the prism, and then on me, his expression shifting from suspicion to curiosity. I forced a calm smile, tilting my head slightly, letting my hair cascade elegantly over my shoulders. "Yes," I said softly, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "We're just practicing for a presentation." Ava let out a soft, relieved breath, but her hand didn't leave mine. I could feel the tension in her fingers, a mirrored reflection of my own anxiety. Every movement was a delicate balance. One misstep could shatter the illusion, yet every gesture reinforced it. The janitor hesitated, then gave a small nod, apparently convinced, and started to leave. My body sagged slightly with relief, but the danger wasn't over. I knew the next challenge was even more daunting. My best friend, Jake, was still in the room, and the tension in his eyes spoke volumes. Jake took a hesitant step closer, his curiosity unrelenting. "Ryan, I don't understand. You look incredible, but why?" His words were genuine, tinged with awe and disbelief. I glanced at Ava, who gave a small nod, silently urging me to be honest, but not fully. My pulse raced. Every word mattered. Every hesitation could betray the secret I had fought to protect. I needed to understand something about myself, I said carefully, my voice soft yet steady. This is who I am, in part. A side I've hidden, but it's real." Ava's eyes shone with a mix of pride and worry. She stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, and whispered, "You're amazing just like this." Jake's gaze softened, though confusion lingered. "I don't know what to say, but you seem confident. More than ever." I swallowed hard, realizing the weight of the moment. For the first time, my dual identity felt validated, not just by my own reflection, but by the acknowledgement of those around me. Yet the lingering fear of exposure remained, a shadow that refused to dissipate. Miss Caldwell's voice cut through gently but firmly. "Ryan, the final step is yours. Embrace the moment fully. Let your presence speak, and remember, control is power." I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the skirt, the subtle brush of heels against the floor, the cool glint of the prism in my hands. Every detail anchored me. Every sensation heightened my awareness. I realized then that this moment, this confrontation, this dance between fear and control, was not just about secrecy. It was about identity, empowerment, and the fragile thrill of being seen as I truly was. Suddenly, a sharp noise came from the window, a loud bang against the glass. All eyes turned instinctively. My pulse skyrocketed. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and exhilarated all at once. Ava clutched my hand, her gaze darting nervously toward the sound. Before I could react, the window rattled again, louder this time, sending a chill down my spine. The janitor and Jake both tensed, looking toward the source of the disturbance. My heart hammered violently against my ribcage. I realized then that despite all my control, all my poise, there were forces beyond my command, ready to shatter everything I had constructed. Miss Caldwell stepped beside me, her eyes narrowing at the window. "Ryan, remember who you are. Hold your ground. Let nothing break your composure." I nodded, my hands gripping the prism tightly. The reflection in the mirror stared back at me, a perfect balance of vulnerability and strength. I realized, with a mix of terror and exhilaration, that this moment would define everything, my identity, my confidence, and the delicate line between secrecy and revelation. Then, the window suddenly burst open, letting in a cold gust of wind that whipped through the room. Paper scattered, the prism clattered to the floor, and my heels slipped slightly on the tile. Ava gasped, Jake froze, and I felt every second stretch into an eternity. And in that instant, a shadowy figure slipped through the window, landing gracefully but silently behind me. I froze, unable to move. The figure's presence radiated authority and mystery, and I realized with a shiver that the ultimate test, exposure, confrontation, and revelation, was finally here. The room fell silent, every heartbeat amplified. I turned slowly, the prism still trembling in my hands, and came face to face with someone whose intentions I couldn't yet read. And that's when I knew I couldn't go back. The shadowy figure stood silently behind me, their presence filling the room with an almost tangible tension. I froze, heels digging into the tile, skirts swaying slightly as I tried to steady my shaking hands. Every nerve in my body screamed that exposure, revelation, and judgment were moments away. Ava gripped my hand tightly, her thumb brushing against mine, a small yet grounding gesture. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of concern, excitement, and something I couldn't quite name. Jake's mouth hung slightly open, disbelief and curiosity warring on his face. Even the janitor seemed momentarily frozen, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. The figure finally spoke, their voice low and controlled, cutting through the silence like a knife. Well, isn't this an interesting surprise? My chest tightened. I knew I should respond, explain, do something, but the words caught in my throat. My entire transformation, the careful balance of identity and secrecy, suddenly felt dangerously exposed. Ava leaned closer, whispering, Ryan, stay calm. Remember who you are. Her words were both reassurance and command. I nodded subtly, forcing myself to take a deep, steadying breath. The figure stepped closer, and I could see now that they were tall, imposing, yet graceful in a way that suggested they were fully aware of the tension they were causing. Their eyes scanned me critically, taking in every detail, the skirt that hugged my legs, the delicate curve of my blouse, the subtle shimmer of makeup on my face, the careful poise of my heels. You've certainly changed, they continued, a hint of amusement in their tone. But the question is why? I swallowed hard. The duality of my identity, the nervous, secretive boy and the confident, transformed persona, waged war within me. How much could I reveal? How much could I hide? The stakes had never felt higher. Jake stepped slightly forward, his curiosity breaking through his hesitation. Who are you? His voice was cautious, but there was a tremor of awe in it. The figure tilted their head slightly, studying him before focusing back on me. Someone who sees the truth, whether you're ready for it or not. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Every instinct screamed that my carefully guarded secret, every thrill of transformation and self-expression, was about to collide with reality. My heart pounded, echoing through the room. As the realization settled in, I had no control over what happened next. Ava's hand tightened around mine. Ryan, we can handle this. Just stay steady. Her voice, calm and unwavering, gave me a momentary anchor, though it didn't diminish the raw intensity of the situation. The figure circled slowly, deliberately, their gaze never leaving me. You've embraced something unique. Yet I wonder, can you maintain it when the world watches? When the illusion is shattered? I clenched the prism in my hands, feeling the cool glass against my fingers. It had been my anchor, a symbol of control and transformation, and now it felt fragile, precarious, like my own identity teetering on the edge. The room seemed to shrink around me, every sound amplified, the whisper of Ava's breath, Jake's uncertain movements, the soft tap of my heels on the floor. My mind raced. Should I speak? Should I hide? Could I maintain the balance between exposure and control, or was everything about to collapse? Ava's voice cut softly through the chaos. Ryan, trust yourself. You've come this far. Don't let fear take it all away. I nodded, my jaw tight, trying to anchor myself in her words. I straightened my posture, lifted my chin, and let my dual self, both vulnerable and empowered, hold the room's attention. I was exposed, yes, but not broken.
Not yet.
The figure stopped in front of me, their eyes locking with mine. You've done well so far, but the real test begins now. A sudden creak from the hallway drew our attention. Another shadow moved in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim light. My pulse leapt. Every protective layer I had built, the transformation, the disguise, the careful balance, felt on the brink of collapse. Jake stepped back slightly, his face pale. What's happening? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My body was a tense coil, every muscle alert, every breath deliberate. The room felt impossibly small, every shadow and sound magnified. My transformation, the thrill, the fear, the exhilaration, was now intertwined with pure suspense, teetering on the edge of revelation. The shadowy figure spoke again, their voice a low whisper that seemed to wrap around me. Ryan, are you ready to face what comes next? Because once it begins, there's no turning back. I swallowed, gripping the prism tightly, my heart hammering like a drum. Ava squeezed my hand, a silent plea of support, and I realized that whatever happened next would define me, not just as Ryan, or as my transformed self, but as someone who dared to confront both fear and desire, secrecy and exposure. And just as the room seemed to hold its breath, the figures stepped closer, their presence almost overwhelming. I felt every second stretch into an eternity, knowing that the ultimate confrontation, truth, revelation, and identity, was about to collide. And that's when the door to the hallway creaked open,